Breaking news on the president's longtime personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, and his fight to delay the lawsuit by the porn star, Stormy Daniels. Let's go right to our national correspondent, Sarah Seidner, monitoring these developments in Los Angeles. Sarah, what's the latest?
This is big movement in the case of Stormy Daniels trying to get out of her non-disclosure agreement, but it's also big move, and it tells you something about what is happening with Michael Cohen, President Trump's personal lawyer. I want to read to you the declaration that he has just filed in district court. He's talking about his Fifth Amendment rights. You will remember that he is now under criminal investigation after his home, his hotel, and his offices were raided. And this case here in California is a civil court case. His attorney has been arguing that because he is now under criminal investigation, he should not have to testify or appear in this civil case because some of the things he says, if he is deposed, for example, may hurt him in the criminal case against him. Here's what Michael Cohen has put in a declaration to the judge, James Otero. He says, based upon the advice of counsel, I will assert my Fifth Amendment rights in connection with all proceedings in the case due to the ongoing criminal investigation by the FBI and U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Those are his words. This is something the judge had asked for, said that he would need to consider whether or not this civil case should go forward because of the criminal case. You're seeing video there of Michael Cohen on a daily basis. We're getting new video of him either going to and from his daily work or going to and from the courts. But it should be very clear that this is very big movement in this case, but also says something about that case against him in New York. And remember what the Fifth Amendment is all about. It's about being able to assert your right not to say something that would hurt you, not to be a witness, for example, that would hurt you. It's to keep you from saying something that could get you in trouble when it comes to your rights to self-criminalization. So this is a very big deal when you consider what is happening in this case, remembering that this is a civil case, the Stormy Daniels case, where she's trying to get out of an NDA, and he is also facing the criminal investigation there in New York.
I want you to stand by, Sarah. Joey Jackson, our CNN legal analyst, is joining us right now. Your reaction, Michael Cohen, the president's longtime personal lawyer, he's under criminal investigation by the feds in New York, now asserting his Fifth Amendment rights to avoid saying anything.
I think it's a very significant development, to be clear. Now, let's understand this. Certainly, you can assert your Fifth Amendment right? That is that I'm not saying a thing, because a person does have the ability not to incriminate themselves. Now, let's make the distinction very clear. The civil case in California obviously relates to matters that are non-criminal, right? However, we do know, Wolf, that there is a Southern District investigation, and as an element to the fraud that the Southern District, that is the feds, are accusing him of, right, or he's under investigation for, is the whole issue of potential campaign finance violations. We know the Stormy Daniels payoff was made about 11 days prior to the campaign. At issue is going to be, what was the intent? Was it a campaign contribution of any kind? If so, did it violate laws? And to that extent, he has the right not to say a thing. So from a legal perspective, it's anticipated. You never want your client, Wolf, who's under an investigation, to say anything that might potentially embroil them even further into it. And so I'm not surprised at this lawyer's move, that they would file a declaration saying, I'm pleading the Fifth, I'm not saying a thing. What I would anticipate then is that nothing will happen along the lines of the civil case in terms of any deposition or anything related to his testimony. That'll be stayed pending the criminal case. And I would also think that in the criminal case, he would have not a word to say. And that is that the federal government will have to construct the case without his participation. Now, I should also say this. There could be some point going down the line that he could be brought into the Southern District for what's called a reverse proffer. What does that mean in English? It means that the federal government does have occasion where, if they have the goods against you, will bring you into their office and they will explain to you exactly what we have. And then it will be up to you, and they will read you chapter and verse. This is the information we have. These are the documents we have. He doesn't have to say a thing. He just listens with his lawyer. And if it's compelling enough, then you may or may not want to cut a deal. We're far away from that, but I'm just looking into the future in terms of what the Southern District can do. But just reminding the viewers, civil case, California, not related, to the Southern District case, which is in New York, but they are related in as much as the one element of the campaign finance violation and whether or not he did indeed violate those laws with the payoff for Stormy Daniels 11 days before the election. A huge, significant development in this case.
Yeah, very significant. And Gloria Borger, you've been monitoring this very closely as well. In this declaration to the U.S. District Court, Michael Cohen, in addition to saying he's going to assert his Fifth Amendment right and not say anything, he does offer this explanation why he's doing it. Based on the FBI raids. During the corresponding raids, he says, the FBI seized various electronic devices and documents in my possession which contain information relating to the $130,000 payment to plaintiff Stephanie Clifford, Stormy Daniels, at the center of this case, and my communications with counsel Brent Blakely relating to this action. So he is making a connection why he's going to assert his Fifth Amendment right.
Right. I mean, look, if there are potential federal election law violations, et cetera, he doesn't want to incriminate himself. You know, I think this is a huge development. I think it's something that would probably be welcomed at the White House, quite honestly, because if he did violate federal election law, if he were to testify about who knew what when, did the president know, did the president not know, I think it's very wise of his attorneys at this point to not have him do it. And if I were Donald Trump, I'd be very happy about that.
You know, it's interesting. As the president's longtime lawyer for more than a decade, Michael Cohen, now formally telling a federal district court he's asserting his Fifth Amendment right. Listen to what President Trump, then candidate Trump, said about those who assert their Fifth Amendment rights. This is September 28th, 2016. Ron, listen to this.
So there are 5 people taking the Fifth Amendment, like you see on the mob, right? You see the mob takes the Fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment?
All right, what's your reaction, Ron?
Right. Well, legally, they may welcome him taking the Fifth. Politically, the name of the president's longtime personal lawyer, or alternately fixer, and the word Fifth Amendment in the same headline, you know, is not a good political juxtaposition. And I think it is, you know, only, I'm not the lawyer here, but I think it is only the first act in what will be a long, you know, a drama with many acts, because ultimately, whether he takes the Fifth or not, the investigation will go on, and if the federal government has a strong case against him on the grounds of Stormy Daniels or otherwise, the question of whether he makes a deal at that point could look very different than it does today. And I think as if you look down the future, you know, if you look at how this may play out over the next several weeks and months, I mean, one thing to keep in mind from everything we have learned about Donald Trump over the last 2 years, I think people should be very sanguine about the likelihood that he is going to stand back, respect the usual boundaries of a president, and allow his personal attorney to face this kind of legal jeopardy that could ultimately redound and, you know, or reverberate into jeopardy for him. And I think everyone in the political system, it just keeps coming back to this, in Congress, ultimately has to be thinking about what they will do to defend the rule of law if it comes under greater threat from the decisions that could flow from this important step today.
It is pretty extraordinary, Caitlin. You covered the White House for us, and you've covered President Trump for quite a while. It is pretty extraordinary that the president's longtime personal lawyer and friend, his so-called fixer, is asserting his Fifth Amendment right. Any reaction you're getting yet?
It's very extraordinary. We have not heard from the White House since this just happened a short while ago, but I would like to note that in that letter that his lawyers sent to the court today, his lawyers who are representing him in the president's
lawyers.
Yes, the president's lawyers that are representing him here in the Michael Cohen case sent this letter indicating really how they're going to handle the information that was seized during those FBI raids, those raids that we know infuriated the president. And one detail that they had in there is that as they're going over the information to see what's privileged, what's not, they said that President Trump is going to help them look at it. They did say, quote, our client will make himself available as needed to aid in our privilege review on his behalf, which just shows just how close this has gotten to the president. We went from a part where the White House was really trying to keep their distance from President Trump, from this case, trying to like protect him essentially with this. And we've seen just how close this has gotten with this letter saying that he's willing to help out. And even yesterday when he was welcoming the French president in the Oval Office and a reporter asked, if it comes to this, would you pardon Michael Cohen? Are you considering that? Certainly a legitimate question that we've all been wondering. And he snapped at the reporter who asked that and said that it was a stupid question. He was very angry about it. So we're really seeing just how consumed the president is. He isn't keeping that private. We're seeing it right out in the public.
Yeah.
You know, Wolf, he hasn't claimed privilege in, you know, there have been, what, more than 37 witnesses that have been interviewed by the special counsel in and around Donald Trump, and they haven't claimed privilege in those interviews. The notion, as Caitlin points out, that the president now will personally be looking at what was scooped up in Michael Cohen's office to see whether privilege should be claimed really gives you an indication of how personally involved he is in what is sitting in Michael Cohen's office.
That's exactly
and
right.
Yeah.
It's a difference. It's a real difference between this and the Mueller investigation.
And we should also note that at that press conference in Palm Beach with the Japanese Prime Minister, the president brought up that he has not had anyone use privilege or he hasn't used privilege. He did bring that up during that press conference when he was being asked about the special counsel if he has any plans to fire the special counsel Robert Mueller or the deputy attorney general.
Yeah.
He did bring that up himself, unprompted by the reporters who were asking.
And we're talking about the criminal investigation in New York, where the president says he has some privilege to go through documents as opposed to the civil case.